Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, their habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Welcome back. It is your friend Cesar Espino with your show, You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. And today I have a special guest. His name is Ed Krow. And I wanted to give you a little bit of Ed Krow before we begin. But before, Ed, good morning. How are you?
I am well, Cesar. How are you this morning?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you for asking. So for those that are listening and watching us, Ed works with executive and business owners who are struggling with people problems, such as adapting to changing business conditions and customer, investor, or community expectations. He is an advocate for using organizational development strategies to drive business results. He speaks to senior leaders across the United States and Canada about how to run their people into strategy contributors. His audience includes such varied organizations as American Associations of Orthopedic Executives, National Associations of Housing Resources, among a few. Ed is certified as a speaker, trainer, and coach through the John Maxwell team, maintains a membership in the National Speakers Association, and is a regular contributor to Forbes.com. He is the author of the Strategic HR Driving Bottom Line Results Through Your People. Wow, that's amazing, Ed. You have a lot going on for yourself. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So it was never my dream to write a book. But I'll tell you, as I do regularly blog and, of course, contribute to Forbes.com. And as I was working with my marketing person, she said, Ed, you've got a lot of good content here. You should put it all in one place. Let's think about putting that into a book. And I kind of looked at her dumbstruck because, again, I just never thought that would be something I'd want to do. And the more I thought about it, I thought, yeah, let's do this thing. And so we spent the bulk of 2019 writing the book, and it became a bit of a passion project. I am a believer that HR in today's business is terribly underutilized, and they're oftentimes looked at as, well, as long as you can hire for me and plan the company picnic and keep me out of legal trouble, then that's HR. My view is that's not HR. That HR is really the key to driving business success in your company. Everything we do in business runs through people, and so if we don't get that people mix right, and not only the people that we've got working for us, but how we train them and motivate them and keep them fired up about what we're doing, we can't possibly make money. And so that is really the tone of my book. It's really for a business executive or even a higher level HR person who wants to take their department to another level of service to their organization.
Wow, that's awesome. And so you wrote this book last year, 2019?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. It just released in January of 2020.
Oh, congrats. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. I can kind of relate to that. I have a book too. And at first I didn't think I was a writer. And first to begin with, I didn't like to read. So I'm like, how am I going to write a book if I don't know how to read, or I don't like to read? Yeah. But at the end of the day, I ended up doing it. And similar to you, is just trying to be able to get a different message to the readers, right? That can relate to that particular book and aspect of that. So I can definitely relate to that. But let me ask you something. Let's take it back a little bit further. Were you always in this, in this type of industry in terms of HR, or how did you stumble about becoming what you're doing now? Like what happened?
Sure. Yeah. So the short answer is no.
Okay.
I actually started my career in business with UPS.
Okay.
And like so many folks back in the day at UPS, when I was in college, I was working the docks, slinging packages, putting them in the trucks, that sort of thing.
Huh.
And so when I graduated, UPS was still very much a promote from within company. And if you wanted to get into a management role, you had to go out and deliver packages in the brown trucks. And so did that for 2 years. Incredible growth experience, in terms of dealing with customers and fluid situations and a varied population, and you're in and out and communicate succinctly. I mean, there were so many lessons back then. I didn't realize they were lessons, but as I look back 30 years later, it's like, wow, what a great 2 years. And so after that, I went into operations management. And again, it was a godsend because if you don't know how your business makes its money, regardless of the position that you hold, you're going to struggle to be an effective contributor. And so being in operations and seeing how the logistics of UPS operated became a huge help to me when they pulled me into HR. And the reason that I got pulled into HR is that my degree was actually in industrial safety. And so I just assumed that when the HR boss came and said, Ed, we want you in our department, that I was going to be a safety guy. And he said, oh, no. I want you out in the field as an HR person. And I said, I don't know anything about that. And so we're going to take care of that. And they really did. They gave me some excellent training, and I never looked back. I've been in HR ever since. And, as great of a company as UPS is, I just didn't feel called any longer to the corporate world, and had this bug eating at me like, gosh, I think I could do something on my own. And so I took that leap, and again, I haven't looked back. I love the consulting world. Late last year, I did a look over the last almost 20 years of being in business, and found that I've worked with over 250 companies.
Wow.
And, when I look at that, you think, holy cow, right?
Yeah.
And so when people ask me, why should I work with you, Ed? What makes you different than some other HR person we can bring in to solve our problems? That's one of the things I tell them is you're getting 250 companies worth of experience that it's so varied. I haven't been doing the same thing over and over for the last 20 years. Every company is unique. Every company is different. And, every client I learn from, because there's some nuance to their industry or how they run their business that forces me to expand my thinking about how to approach a challenge.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you know what? I didn't know that about you in terms of having your background in logistics. Very similar to my story too, in the sense of I worked in the logistics industry too. For
nice.
some of the major freight forwarders. My last company was using logistics. Prior to that was Hellman Worldwide, and
okay.
I had a lot of interaction with UPS, FedEx, all those other big companies. Which, by the way, you do learn a lot of stuff from those companies, because
Absolutely.
they do have some really good programs when it comes down to people skills, continuous improvement. I learned a lot of great skills working in those companies and lately working in the corporate world.
Right.
And you know what? I had something similar like you, which was that calling of you can do something more for yourself or for others by leaving this company that, although it's a good company, you can probably do something better for yourself. And so I want to learn more about that, because that's very interesting to know, because I know that a lot of people that are listening to us, they might be on the fence line of maybe deciding to continue to work for that corporate job, even though it's a good job, or having that 9 to 5, or being relying on somebody else's, I guess, time for them to survive. And so,
right.
I know it might have been a little bit different from maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago to where when you did it 20 years ago, except what are some takeaways or lessons that you will say, like, if, might be critical for people, that if they're on the fence line, they should just follow that?
Right. I'm so glad you asked that question, because I several times a year I'll have coffees or lunches with folks that want to pick my brain on that very topic. Hey, I'm thinking about getting into consulting. What can you tell me? And here's my advice. I tell folks that, number one, there is something different about relying on yourself. It's terribly liberating. It's also terribly terrifying, right? So, you have to have not just a good business plan on paper, because after all, that's just paper. You have to have a good plan for what are you going to do to not be on a revenue roller coaster, and especially in the beginning when you're shaking a lot of hands, kissing a lot of babies, and you may not be seeing the revenue come in just yet. You have to be prepared for that. And so for me, it's you've got to be all in, right? There's not I'm going to dip my toe in this water. And so for me, I was very fortunate that during my HR time with UPS, and being in that hiring role and everything, I was out in the community a lot. And so as I started thinking about making this jump to self-employment, I already had a lot of community contacts, business owners that I
Hi, Ed. I think I lost you. There you go. You're back. Yeah,
I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay.
We lost you a little bit.
Yeah, sorry. So by the time I was ready to make the jump to consulting, I was so fortunate. I already had 3 clients. And so out of the gate, I had a couple of folks who could keep the lights on in my house for me for several months as I continued to grow the business. Now, the one thing you can't plan for is what's going to go on with the economy. And so I went out on my own in early 2001. Things were going okay, not great, because things are slow as you're building your business. And then what happened in September? And the economy came to a grinding halt because of 9/11. And so I would go to mixers and things, and folks would say to me, well, Ed, how are you feeling about being out on your own now? This is a hard time. And I said, look, it's still all about building relationships. I've got to build trust before people are willing to put their faith in me in the form of a paycheck for solving their problems. And so I guess either I was really just not, maybe I was clueless back then. I don't know. Right. In terms of but I looked at it and said, hey, if money's tight right now for businesses, then what better time to make sure I'm solidifying relationships. Mm-hmm. And I'm so blessed that, I've got clients still that are working with me today that worked with me that first year in business.
Wow.
It's amazing. And every time I get a little bit down, or I think, gosh, am I making a difference? I think about that and I think, wow, you're a very lucky guy.
Right. And sometimes when you can go back and you can look back and look at the things you've done, even if you didn't, at least for me, one thing that I see now is that even if I didn't monetize, a huge amount of money, yet I go back and I know that I made a difference in somebody else's business or somebody else's life. To me, that's kind of fulfilling. That's the reason why I left my corporate job, because I was making the money, yet I was not fulfilling other people's, needs and wants. And so to me, that's, kind of important for me. Right. Mm-hmm. One thing that you mentioned, and I don't know if people, were able to listen to that, except you put it in different terms, but you said this, and Les Brown talks about this, and he said it's better to be prepared and not having an opportunity than having an opportunity and not being prepared. And so one of the advice you mentioned is, not just put it on paper. Make sure you're working on whatever it is you want to be able to do. Prepare yourself. Even though you haven't jumped and taken the leap of faith yet, prepare yourself so that when you do so and you have that opportunity, you already know what you're doing. And that's critical, I think, when people want to take that leap of faith, because, again, a lot of times we think we want to do something and yet we're not prepared and we do it. And then that becomes more of a difficult roller coaster, right, for us to manage.
And I've used the example that a lot of people are married to the idea of being self-employed, but not married to being self-employed. Two very different things, right? Everyone thinks that being self-employed, we get to sit around in t-shirt and shorts all day long. And, depending on what you do, maybe you do get to do that. But the reality is that you're solely reliant on yourself. And again, it's liberating and terrifying all at the same time. And I think that those of us that are kind of crazy enough to be entrepreneurs, there is something different in our DNA that allows us to be confident enough in our abilities without being rash in our decision making. And so, it's hard to sometimes look at being a business owner and saying, okay, not everything that I charge a client goes into my pocket, right? I mean, I'm running a business, so I've got to maintain a website and a marketing presence, and I've got to have people around me that can help me to do those things. And, you are truly running a business if you want to be successful. And so the consultants that I find that flame out look at it as, well, I charge a client X, I put that in my pocket, I go to the next client. And that will work to a certain extent. But if you really want to throw gas on your business and get it really fired up, then you've got to reinvest back in it, no different than any corporation does.
Yeah.
And that's a tough decision, right? When you're quite literally saying, okay, I'm going to spend X amount of dollars over here that could otherwise go into my bank account. But that just comes with, again, having the fortitude to say, no, I'm running a business here. I'm not in it for the quick gratification. I'm trying to build something.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's one of those things where, having the idea or the business idea is great. You do need to make sure that you have sales and marketing into the equation, because that's really the foundation of your business. And I always tell people, even if you feel like you're not in sales, when you're a self-employed, you're an entrepreneur, you are in sales. It doesn't matter what you do, because you're going out and seeking for that business. And so you have to be able to build those skills on how to talk to people, which kind of leads to my next question. In your HR, business, how critical is people skills? Or, and I know some companies, sometimes they separate HR and then they have like a public relationships, separate. Do you combine those as part of what you do, or is that a separate thing? Hey, yet I show you on mute. Hello?
Sorry, I think my cheek is bumping my phone.
No worries.
So I, as I was preparing to write the book, I started interviewing CEOs to find out what they wanted from HR. And one of the interviews that really stood out was with a gentleman who is CEO of a fuel oil company. And they deliver fuel oil, and they run the little convenience stores as well. And he actually came out of human resources, went in through sales and that sort of thing, made his way to CEO. And I asked him, his thoughts on what he needed from HR. And he said, let me tell you, Ed, right now, I'm looking for a director of HR for my company, and it's not going to be an HR person. Excuse me? He said, I need someone at that level in my company who's a great communicator. He said, I've got a great HR team of HR generalists that are good at handling all the other facets of HR. And sure to his word, the person that he hired came out of marketing. And so some would say that's foolish. When I've told that story, someone said, well, he's crazy.
Right.
I think he's brilliant. He knew that he had the HR bases covered, but he also knew that he needed someone that was going to be able to go out throughout the organization and communicate HR's programs and goals effectively. And certainly someone from marketing should be able to have a great communication skill set. And so it's working quite well for him. And so when I talk to HR groups and they say, what's the thing we got to work on, Ed? What do we have to do to get through to the C-suite? Learn to talk their talk. The C-suite doesn't care what your the employee picnic cost or what the percentages are on the employee opinion survey. What they care about is where we're spending our money to benefit our people. Are we getting a return on that investment? And if you can't speak to that, then you're not viewed as a strategic person in business, and therefore you're not going to be asked for your opinion.
Right. And is that the reason why a lot of companies, or I know not a lot, some companies that I've worked for in the past, they have a PR, public relationships team that are working hand in hand with HR?
I believe so. I think you're onto something there, that they recognize that HR doesn't have the communication skill sets that they need. And so, it goes to marketing or it goes to PR or whatever to run those things. I mean, I recall working with an accounting firm that was going through a rebranding. And when it came time to roll the rebranding out to the employees and talk about the reasons for the rebranding and everything, HR wasn't even involved in the discussions. It was all marketing. And, some of the things blew up in their faces because marketing was approaching it from a marketing perspective. Oh, we'll give people swag, right? The new coffee mugs and tchotchke stuff. And that's only part of the piece in communicating out to your people. Why are we rebranding? How do we get you on message with the rebrand so you can go out to our customers and talk that talk as well?
Okay. Wow. That's amazing. So right now, like how many clients do you work at any given point?
So typically I'm around, because I've got some clients that use me just sort of regularly, it's not project work. I usually have about a dozen clients at a time at any one time that are in anything from I'm in a retainer relationship with them and they involve me in their decision making and that sort of thing, to clients that bring me in like a SWAT team to say, Ed, we've got a problem. We need your help to fix it. So for instance, was just on the phone with a CEO the other day who has really almost his right-hand man is starting to flake out a little bit. Wow. and is there's something going on with him. So he said, I need you to come in and let's do some coaching with this guy. So we can figure out what's going on and what's happening, because he's a key member of the leadership team, but something emotionally is just off with him. And so I'm happy to go in and do that. I'm working with a board of directors right now who are dysfunctional, and that's starting to impact the organization because the CEO doesn't know what she's supposed to be doing now because she's getting mixed messages from the board. And so those are some fun things that I get to do, that you've got those tangible results almost immediately. I mean, working with this board, a couple sessions in, I mean, I don't mean to sound like I'm a magician, but you get to know what buttons to push. Right. And when that happens, you start to see the change. And this board, after a couple sessions, some of the members of the company said, Ed, you're amazing. I'm like, no, you guys are amazing. You guys are the ones that are changing. I'm just bringing it out of you. Right.
So, yeah, exactly. No, that's awesome. And so besides, this, you do a lot of speaking and training. So how is that, all involved with your career?
Right. So I kind of, I got pulled into the speaking thing about 10 years ago. My local HR chapter asked me to do a talk. The economy wasn't the greatest, and a lot of companies were trying to figure out, well, what do we do with compensation of our people? And that's one of my areas of specialty. And so I said, yeah, I'll come in and talk about that. And I had fun doing it. And that led to a couple of other talks. And so I decided a couple years ago that, hey, there's something here. I enjoy doing it. People want to hear what I have to say. So maybe this should be a legitimate part of my business. And so I got real serious about attaining some speaking credentials as a professional speaker. I think that's important. Hence the John Maxwell certification and becoming a member with NSA. And that's not easy. I mean, it's not you just send the check in and you're a member. You have to have a demonstrated history of speaking revenues coming in and to even get into NSA. And so, so now, what I found is that not only do I enjoy the speaking and I get asked to go to these conferences, but invariably it leads to consulting work, that folks love what I've had to say. And they say, gosh, Ed, you've solved a couple problems for me already. We got to work together. And that to me is a much That's more fulfilling than someone filling out a review form saying, hey, this guy was a great speaker. When they come up to me and say, after an hour of listening to me say, Ed, we got to work together. To me, that just puts me over the moon, because that tells me that I've made the connection with somebody.
Yeah, and from a business perspective, or from from being an entrepreneur and having that primary focus of being a consultant, this is what I would consider to be a customer of a customer. Yeah, so you went there to talk to people, yep. And that's you can still see them as customers. They're there to listen to you. Now Absolutely. They want to continue to buy more into you, into your ideas, and so now they became an outside client of yours doing the consulting. So that's a good way to build your business, when you have multiple things that you do, and then you have a customer of a customer of a customer. And that's exactly what you're doing here, which is obviously something that you as an entrepreneur want to be able to do.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun.
Right.
My marketing person, it gave me a phrase a couple years ago, and it has just stuck with me. And that's that if you can stay in your joy and genius zone, not only will you be happy, but you'll be prosperous. And so I've found that as I've weeded out of my business the things that I don't enjoy doing, and it's hard to do that because that's revenue, right? Mm-hmm. But what I found is it frees me up to do the things that I really enjoy doing. And because I enjoy them, I'm finding that more of that is coming. It's like the universe is saying, all right, Ed, you're in your zone now. You're ready to make this happen. And I know that sounds terribly hippie-ish, I guess, but it's one of those things that it's self-fulfilling. And so, there's not, I can honestly tell you, Cesar, there is not one person that when I see their ID on the phone come through that I go, oh my gosh, they're calling me again. I just don't have clients like that. The right. clients that I have, we can sit and go to lunch and just shoot the bull about stuff, right? And just have that kind of relationship. And to me, that's what it's really all about, that I've made the connection with an individual. And if I'm able to help them along the way, great. But when I can sit down with a business owner or an executive and just go to coffee to catch up, and they're willing to give me that time to talk about what's going on in their life, that's just awesome.
Yeah. So key point here: do what you know how to do the best, and do what you enjoy, and your business is going to flourish, right? And that's something that is difficult for people to do. Like sometimes they feel like they're losing the control. Yet, I think Dean Graziosi said this, and a couple of people that I listened to is like, just make sure that just focus on the things that you know how to do best and the things mm-hmm. that you enjoy. Everything else you have to outsource, and outsourcing could be you hire a marketing person, could be you're hiring an assistant, whatever the case may be, or even a VA, whatever it is in your business model. Except outsource that you don't really enjoy, and although you might not be a best at it, because you're gonna gain that time back. It might cost you money. Yet you're gaining that money back through a different way, right? And more customers, different aspects. So that's something that everybody needs to do if they're thinking of doing their own business.
Absolutely, and that's a tough one. It really is. As an entrepreneur, sometimes you feel like you want to do everything, and when you get to a certain point, you can't. And I think that's a challenge for folks who are new to consulting. Is that they have a scarcity mindset that, if I let this go, someone else is going to get it. There is so much work out there for us, no matter what your industry is. Mm-hmm. And case in point, one of my best referral partners is another HR consultant.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But she does what I would call HR 101 level stuff. So she goes in and she handles employee situations and writes job descriptions and handbooks, all the basics. I don't do that. Mm-hmm. She doesn't do higher level things, team facilitation, succession planning, compensation programming, and incentive design work. And so we've been great referral partners for the last 10 years. And it's amazing when people say, you actually refer work to her? Well, yeah, I like her. I trust her. She takes care of my clients. The work she's doing, she enjoys, and I don't want to do that. It's not that it's beneath me. It's just not in my joy and genius zone. And so it's been a great partnership, that referral relationship. And so, when I tell folks that, sometimes again, they look at me like, wow, you actually refer work to another HR consultant all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. That's awesome. And that's one thing that I don't see anyone as my competition. If anything, I see them as my contributor, right? And when you start seeing it from that perspective, then you really, the only person you're competing with is yourself. So
Right.
So that's good. So obviously you enjoy working with people. I mean, that's your passion. You enjoy working with people, right?
You have to. And right. That's not just because I'm in HR, right? I mean, if you're going to be self-employed, I mean, there are very few jobs where you could say, I hate people and get away with it and make a living, right? I mean, so there has to be a certain enjoyment in getting to know people, wanting to understand what makes them tick, and figuring out what's going to solve their problems. I mean, when a CEO sits down with me and says, Ed, I got this problem and I want you to help me fix it. Okay, I could really, after 30 years, I could probably jump to the solution right away. Mm-hmm. But the real trick is getting to figure out why it's a problem for that CEO. Mm. Why is he or she so worked up about what's going on in their business? What's it doing to them on an emotional level, on a personal level? Because I don't want to just fix it in the short run. I want to make sure that it puts their mind at ease. And so, I think about a project I was working on late last year where the CEO had heard me speak, was the first one in line after my talk, shoved his business card in my hand, said, Ed, we got to talk, and proceeded to tell me about how he manages an $80 million medical practice, and his HR function was dysfunctional, and he needed help. And so when we first met, I said, what's the problem with this? He said, Ed, I don't want to be involved in HR, but we're trying to open another medical campus. If HR can't get this campus right, there's no way I can open up this next campus and expand our business. And I can't have that. The docs who are owners of this practice are expecting me to make this happen. And so essentially my job's on the line. And so that was his drive. Don't care how you fix it, but I don't want HR getting in the way of us expanding this business, or even on a more personal level, him not being able to fulfill his role as CEO for the owner partners. And so, as I got in there and worked with HR, and they weren't as bad as I thought they would be. I mean, there were some minor tweaks that we did over it was like 6 to 9 months we worked together. But they're full speed ahead now on this new medical campus. I checked in with the CEO in January. He's like, Ed, things are firing on all cylinders. There's still little things. We'll probably be calling you later this year to come back and tweak some stuff. But overall, it's been amazing.
Wow, that's amazing.
And after a better testimonial than that.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's amazing. So going back to the people, enjoying working with people, you also like to teach the Millersville University, right?
Yeah, I teach. Millersville's a local Division II level school. It's actually my alma mater. Mm-hmm. And gosh, I've been doing that for about 20 years, and keeps me out of trouble one night a week is how I look at it. But it's a chance to, I think the thing that I enjoy most about it is the class that I teach is on how you design training programs in industry. And so the students that are taking it are all junior and senior level. And I've had a number of students write to me, 5-6 years later and say, hey, Ed, at the time, I took the class because I had to or whatever, but your class I've used more than a lot of my other classes. Wow. And so even in my academic life teaching, I try to get the students to understand that, look, there's a place for theory, but I'm going to give you nuts and bolts things you are going to use regardless of what your major is. You're going to use these skills in industry. I guarantee it, because all of you came to college so that you could level up in business. And as soon as you start leveling up, you're going to have people responsibilities. And a big part of that is training your people. And so I teach it as a very much, I treat them like I would treat a business executive in terms of how I teach the class and the principles that I'm teaching them. And so it is a lot of fun. Again, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun.
Right.
And it's just one of those things that I enjoy doing. And my wife will tell you it gets me out of the house one night a week. And so,
right. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's, it's a challenge sometimes with my travel schedule to work it in, but it's getting to the point now where it's almost like I'm giving back as well. I'm certainly not doing it for the paycheck. I mean, they don't pay a lot to an adjunct instructor who's teaching one night a week, and so it is more of a passion thing for me. I think at this point, and but yeah, it's enjoyable, and it keeps me on my toes. I mean, it forces me to take a group of 20 students at 6:00 at night when they're already tired. Hopefully they're not still hungover from partying the night before, but you look at that and say, okay, that's a different group to attempt to motivate as a speaker than being in front of 100, 200 or whatever executives who are there specifically to hear you. So it's a challenge as well.
Yeah, no, and I think that we need more of that. I like the what you mentioned. Obviously a lot of times education is more of a theory, and that's all you learn, the theory of it. Yet when you bring in some of the real world skills and examples that you can actually see in that industry, that makes it a lot different. I mean, that definitely makes it a lot more advantageous for you to pay attention to. Really get into that subject. And I know for me, when I went to my undergrad, it was all theory, right? And I don't know if some of the teachers that were teaching it had been in the industry or not. Yet I hear a lot of people, though, that many of the teachers, that's all they do is just they get a degree, they're listening to that. And nothing against that. I'm just saying that I think it's better to have the real world examples and skills, in which is what you're bringing into the classroom, right?
Right. I was amazed that so at our college, actually, we're heading into spring break this week, and they've decided with the virus outbreak that they're going to go to all online classes for the rest of the semester, and they asked each of the profs for a detailed plan of how they were, how we were going to do this. So I submitted mine, and the dean came back to me and said, "Ed, this is the most detailed and well thought out plan that I've seen yet." And I didn't want to throw stones, but I'm thinking, that's because I'm in industry. Right. I mean, this is something that's easy. You and I are having a great discussion via technology. We don't need to be in front of each other. I don't need to be sitting across the desk from you to do this interview. And so I said, well, thank you. But going to Zoom and using the online platforms that the university already has, this is like just flipping a switch here for me. Yeah. And so, I just think it's one of those things that if I can contribute back a little something, great. If I'm not, the moment I feel like I'm not contributing, whether it's the teaching or whatever I do, it's time for me to reevaluate whether I should still be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, obviously you're teaching there. Has the opportunity come about to you helping them in their HR, PRs, departments?
So we had talked about that, and then you kind of get into that potential conflict of influence, right? Because I'm a faculty member over which HR has some purview. So, I know their HR folks. In fact, one of the guys in their safety function I know very, very well. And it's, we talk shop, but I never pursued anything on a true business relationship there. I just think it doesn't pass the smell test for me. So, Yeah.
No, then sometimes it's better to just leave them untouched. The conflict of interest can definitely be, interesting. So, Ed, I just have one last question for you, and sure. I definitely had a really good time talking to you. So, what is one thing that that you want to leave behind, or tell our listeners that are listening to this in terms of what they can do to really take their life to the next level if they're stuck on something, and for them to feel like they can overcome that challenge?
So we all get stuck. Let's be honest. Even the most successful people get stuck. And if I'm being brutally honest, I would say there are times I still doubt myself. After all these years in business, there are times I still have doubts. And so, someone who is feeling maybe they're wanting to start the business, or they have, and it's not quite going the way they want to go. A little bit of doubt is okay, and it can be motivating. And as long as you have a plan to get through it, you're probably going to be okay if you've got a solid business idea. I think in terms of the greater good, there's a quote from John Maxwell that just sticks with me. Mm-hmm. And it's something that honestly, given the state of of the world today, and certainly American politics, I think they could learn a lot. And that's that if we could just find the 1%, let's say it's you and I, right? And we're in conflict and we can't figure it out. If you and I could find the 1% that we could agree on, and then give 100% of our effort to working on that 1%, the other 99% starts to fall away a little bit, right? And so when I think about that in terms of we're always going to come up against people who don't have our view. And certainly as being a business owner in today's environment where you need to be active on social media, there are always going to be people that have differing opinions. And if you have thin skin, that's going to be problematic for you. For me, do I take some things personally that people throw at me? Yeah, honestly, I do. It's one of my things that I continue to work on. Mm-hmm. But I try to, before I go down the dump spout, I try to look at whatever they're saying and say, okay, what is their truth? Why is this coming from them? And I may not agree with it, but can I at least try to understand it? And that's hard because I'm human. I mean, there are things I say and I think, well, gosh, that wasn't the right thing. And so, I guess my advice to folks is before you react, try and figure out the position the person is coming from. And can you find that 1% that you can agree on and then build from there?
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you for that. That's definitely, I never saw it that way. And I like how it was put, focus on that 1%, give you 100% to the 1%, and everything else is going to fall off. And I really love that. I like how that's, positioned.
Yeah, it's, John Maxwell calls it his 101% principle. And I love it.
Yeah, 101%. Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. And so if people wanted to work with you or wanted to find out more about you, where can people find you?
So I'm all over social media. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. My website is the best website in the world. It's just edkrow.com. And that's edkrow.com. You can find my book there or on Amazon. And obviously my contact numbers and email and everything are on all of those
awesome
websites as well and social media sites. So, if someone wants me, they can find me.
Awesome. Well, Ed, I really appreciate this. Thank you so much for being out here and taking the time to speak to me and my listeners. Definitely really had a great time talking to you.
Yeah, the time flew. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Yeah, definitely. And for the rest of you guys, don't worry. I'm going to have all the links, his contact information here so you guys can connect with him. If you're definitely in HR or anything to do with that, go pick up his book. And if you're not, you still go pick up his book. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Make sure you like this. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. You share it. We can be found on Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, all other platforms. And thank you again for listening. Stay tuned for the next interview. And Ed, once again, thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Cesar.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you tuned in to this podcast. You can find me at Spreaker.com, where you can like and subscribe. And to learn more about myself and my services, you can find me at www.CesarRespino.com, or you can also find me at Facebook under Cesar R. Espino. Once again, thanks for joining me. I am looking forward to having you at the next episode, and know that you truly can overcome anything.